Please welcome to the stage Frank Longombardi, National Board Chair of the Arthritis Foundation.
Good morning, everyone. Where is everybody? I guess everybody had a fun night last night. Welcome to our conference. It's my pleasure to welcome to the stage our new president and CEO, Steve Taylor. Steve has over 3 decades of experience devoted to making life better for patients with life-altering diseases. Since joining the Arthritis Foundation in 2021, Steve has established the organization's multi-year strategic mission plan, which outlines the foundation's clear pathways to finding a cure and improving the life of adults, quality of life for adults and kids diagnosed with arthritis. He is passionate about aligning the foundation's advocacy agenda and science strategy with the organization's priorities, which are shaped by patient voices. Steve's leadership is guided by the foundation's strong community of patients and volunteers like all of you here today and joining us online. Prior to joining the Arthritis Foundation and his appointment to CEO earlier this year, Steve served as president and CEO of Sjogren's Foundation for 18 years. While there, he worked to make Sjogren's a household name, increasing awareness among the general public and healthcare professionals. He also notably led the development of the first ever clinical practices guidelines for Sjogren's, a resource to help physicians treat, manage, and monitor their patients. Steve will tell you a little bit more about himself as he lays out the Arthritis Foundation's strategic plan and our ongoing commitment to JA. So I hope you have a great day today, and welcome to the stage, Steve Taylor.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm excited to share with you a little bit about our 3-year strategic plan, but I have a few housekeeping issues. First is on your table, there are index cards, and the white index cards are for first-time conference attendees, and the colors are for those that are returning. And if you have questions for myself or for the next speaker, Maria Vasileva, our Senior Scientific Vice President, put them on the cards and we'll be collecting them through our presentation because we're gonna have time at the end to read off some of the questions and answer them as well. So please jot them down. Any question is fair game. And if we don't get to them today, we're gonna take them back to the office and use them for information, education, and other opportunities as well. So first of all, welcome to the JA conference. Thrilled to have all of you here in the room, but also those that are watching us virtually as well. We have nearly 800 people around the world watching us and thrilled to have such a great attendance. But I think what's exciting is that we're not only be able to get back face to face, but we're also able to bring our conference and education virtually to people that couldn't make it to Florida this year. So we're thrilled to be able to have that hybrid opportunity, and it'll probably be something we'll continue in the future as well. I wanted to share a little bit personally about my background with you all, as Frank did in his wonderful bio about me, but to show my commitment to children throughout my career. You know, children are very important to me. I've got 3 of my own I'll talk about in a moment. But at the Sjogren's Foundation, not only did we work on adult Sjogren's, but I launched the first ever pediatric Sjogren's focus for us over the 18 years I was there. And it was also the first time we ever had a pediatric rheumatologist serve on the National Board of Directors for the Sjogren's Foundation as well. When at the American Heart Association in upstate New York, many, many years ago, myself and 2 staff started the Cardiac Kids program, which was very similar to the JA days that you're all familiar with. But we started the Cardiac Kids program, and it was back in the 90s. And that ended up going national. The Heart Association took that program nationally. And so believing in our kids and supporting them and their families has been really a mainstay of my career since I started in nonprofits at the American Heart Association, then moved on to Sjogren's as well. For those that don't know me, I live in Northern Virginia, and these are my 3 kids, Jack, Owen, and Austin. The person not in the picture is my husband, Joe, who's taking the picture at the Jingle Bell Run this last December in Arlington. But you'll see my twin boys, Jack and Owen. They're very tall. I look very short compared to them, but they're 6'7" and 6'3". They graduated college last year and are both on their career. And as I say, as you all parents will someday hope, they are off payroll officially. So that's very exciting. And Jack lives in New York City now, and Owen lives in Northern Virginia near me. And then my youngest son, Austin, is a senior in high school this coming school year. I wanted to share a little bit about Austin's story. Although all 3 of our kids were born and ended up in neonatal intensive care, partially the twins were early because they were multiple birth. But Austin was born unexpectedly with spina bifida. And I wanted to share a little bit about that story because it really, I understand the plight of a parent fighting for your child, making sure that you get the answers you need as quickly as you need, that you find the doctors that know the answers or that can work with you, that have the bedside manner that you want and expect from a doctor. And so he was born unexpectedly, and he had 3.5-hour spinal surgery at 3 days old. Very stressful for the family. I'm very fortunate. Austin has had a great life and hasn't had many complications from it really at all. So surely we're very blessed, and surely it's not the same journey that you're all on. But I share that with you because those first 3 days, learning about spina bifida, never knowing anything about it, fighting for the doctors, interviewing neurosurgeons to make sure we were choosing the right one, was extremely stressful. And I know you all live that regularly, not only finding a pediatric rheumatologist, but then finding the specialists that you have to deal with that will understand, but most importantly, appreciate the disease that your children have. I think that's the one challenge with doctors sometimes, in all due respect to those that are in the room, is finding those doctors that will appreciate the disease that your child has. And appreciate and understand the severity of those diseases. We had the same challenge in Sjogren's as well. Sometimes doctors didn't believe in the disease as much or don't think arthritis is that big of a deal. And making sure that you as a parent have that information, that ammunition, that information to take to those doctors to impress them how important and serious these diseases are for your kids. And so I surely know a little bit about your journey, and I just like to share that so you kind of know where I'm coming from and how important kids are in my career as well. So we're excited at the Arthritis Foundation to be back together. Obviously, 2022 is our year to come back together, not only at JA Conference, but we did hold our Pathways Conference this past June in Kansas City. And we had a great turnout and wonderful opportunity to meet with many of our leaders from around the country and volunteers. But of course, our other JA programming is coming back this year as well. JA Days are starting to get back face-to-face. Our JA Connect groups, which are our localized support groups that we have, if you're not familiar with them, they're going to start to hopefully meet face-to-face, and some of them will remain virtual. I don't want to say they're all coming back live immediately, and some may never, because some of the opportunities in parts of our country, it's easier to do virtual events or virtual Connect groups, but we're trying to give opportunities to come back face-to-face because we know that camaraderie and that teamwork and meeting each other face-to-face makes such a difference. Our JA camps I'm going to talk about in our JA conference, of course, I'll talk about in a few minutes, are also obviously back live this year. But this morning, I wanted to share a little bit about our 3-year strategic plan. As Frank said, I joined the organization a year ago, February, as Executive Vice President. And then over that first year I was here, before I became President and CEO, I was charged by our CEO, Ann Palmer, who many of you know, to really come together with our 3-year strategic mission plan. And how I started that plan was I went to our impact objective that Ann and the team had developed before I joined. I think this is one of our greatest statements that was developed before I was here, which is really what our impact is. The bottom line says we want to create the reputation as the cause leader for audaciously attacking arthritis and its effects. And how are we going to be that cause leader? Now, we are already the cause leader in many areas, but we want to be the global cause leader, where when a patient's diagnosed, their families or themselves look to the Arthritis Foundation for education, information, support, connections. We want to be the first place a doctor calls when they want to learn about arthritis or want information for their patients or want to educate their staff about arthritis. We want to be the first place a researcher calls, either in the pediatric space or in the adult rheumatology space, with a research question that they want to get funded or find out how they could get that moving because they thought of a great idea. We want to be the first place that they call for that as well. So to be that cause leader is really our focus and what we are laser focused on becoming, because we know that together, if we can bring all of those communities together, researchers, doctors, and our patient community, we can really start to move things forward even faster than we already are. Surely I joined a very strong organization. I know COVID surely hurt us as an organization before I was here, but still I always told Ann Palmer, she created a lean, mean machine that left us in great stead moving forward to be able to grow in the right direction for the future. Although painful to get through COVID for us, it definitely left us in a great place to be able to grow the right way we need to grow over the next 10 and 20 years. So from that impact objective, and of course from our mission, which is to conquer arthritis, the middle green circle is our network. So you might have heard the word network before, but the word network means to us is where our communities are, where you all are located, your local communities. It's where your local events are held, where your JA days are held, where your local leadership boards meet, where everything happens locally. That's our networks. And our networks help to fuel and fund our two pathways. So this slide gets blown out on our 3-year plan. You'll see that the network really helps fuel and fund our two different pathways. So you'll see pathway to a cure and then pathway to improved quality of life. And Maria is going to share in a moment about our pathway to a cure, which involves our science initiatives, our grants, our programs, our strategic plan in science. The other box is our workforce development. How are we going to expand, diversify, support rheumatology as a workforce, both in the adult, but for all of you in the pediatric space? We know there is a dearth of parts of our country that we don't have pediatric rheumatologists, and we're working hard to see if we can solve some of that so access becomes easier for you and your kids as well. And then on the improved quality of life side, and I'm going to go into this a little more detail, is our two boxes: disease and pain management programming, as well as continuity care, which is our work in advocacy. So, but first, before I begin that, I do want to mention that we thank you to all those that took our JA Insights program over the last year and a half. We did just this week launch our first report from the data that was collected from you about your kids in our JA Insights and Action report. And I encourage you to go online. It was literally went live this week, so we don't have printed copies for you, but you can go online and find it on our website, and through our social media channels, you can find a link as well. But you'll see that we collected amazing data, and in it, you'll see a lot of details. I think what this report does for you is makes you not feel so alone. It might give you a little relief. It might get a little frustrating to read it, because it surely was frustrating to me that our kids have to live with some of these symptoms, challenges, impact to their quality of life. But also it might give you as a parent a little relief that you know you're not alone, that you'll see a statistic that you know that 58% people have this, and that makes you maybe feel a little bit better that your child isn't alone in the situation. But again, it could be frustrating at the same time, but really great data, and I encourage you to go do that. But those are the voices that drive us. These reports and these data that you all give us help us determine our programming and our educational opportunities and what we do at conference and what we do at camps to help us know what the children need and what you need as caregivers to those kids as well. So back to the kind of the impact of quality of life and our disease and pain management programming, the staff and I developed 5 core buckets of educational programming that we'll be doing over these next 3 years. And I don't have time to go into all the details on these, but these are going to be in our core 6 arthritis forms that we focus on. And that includes osteoarthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, ankylosing spondylitis, gout, psoriatic arthritis, and then juvenile arthritis. So, for example, in webinars, roundtables, podcasts, we're going to have education in all 6 of those areas. We're also going to do that in Connect groups and online community. We're also going to do that in our resources, which our website just launched our core 6 pages. So I encourage you to go to arthritis.org and scroll down, and you'll see the core 6 pages down there. And that'll take you to juvenile arthritis and more information about it. So those are our resources. We have many, many resources, especially in the JA space. But we wanted juvenile arthritis programs to also be its special bucket. That's how important it is to the organization. JA has been a cornerstone of the Arthritis Foundation for many, many years. Under my leadership and Frank's leadership, it will continue to be a cornerstone. We believe in investing in this area, and you'll hear about that in our science work as well, but investing in all of you for education and awareness. So we wanted it as a special bucket as well. And then finally, our DEI work, making sure we're diversifying, but we're also including people to hear from them about what they need. So from there, I want to talk a little bit about a few of our programs. I mentioned our JA Days, and if you're a new parent, don't even know what JA Days are, those are localized events that volunteers help coordinate for us. They can be picnics, they can be tours of firehouses, they can be pumpkin. I heard yesterday there's one that does a pumpkin patch event in the fall. So there's great opportunities, and I encourage you to look to your local staff or the Arthritis Foundation's website to learn more about your area and if there's a JA Day near you. And of course, if there isn't one, our local staff would be more than happy to chat with you about looking for your support to start one maybe in your community if there's not one within driving distance from you as well. Our JA conference is another area that we're fully invested in. We invest nearly almost $1 million in our JA conference planning and programming, scholarships to bring families here. All of our commitment to JA conference is very important to us. And I think what is amazing talking to many of you and over the year and a half I've been here about JA conference is how life-changing JA conference can be. We know there's a number of you in this room that have been here for years and you find it amazing, but you found connections and your kids found friends that have similar conditions to them that will last them a lifetime and make them not feel so alone. And for those that are new, we hope that you'll find those experiences this weekend as well. And so JA Conference will be in Atlanta next year. More details coming out about that down the road. And then, of course, our JA camps, very important to the organization. We have 9 camps that are held. They're sleepaway camps for the organization. You'll see the list there. We did just end our virtual camp. So we did have a national virtual camp for those that couldn't go away to camp this year or was too far to go to one of our camps. But we're thrilled to have our camp program back live this year after being on hiatus for 2 years during COVID. And then the second part of the bucket is that we want to make sure that we're looking at the continuity of care, what we call the ideal model of care. What the ideal model of care is when you're diagnosed with arthritis, either as an adult or a child, we know what the ideal care model should be, what you should receive, what kind of care you should get, what kind of treatments you should get. We are working on making sure that the barriers to that care are knocked down. So we know there's certain things that we know you need, but sometimes there's barriers in your way: cost, access, health insurance issues, all different areas that cause us problems to make sure your children get that care. And so we are working with the advocacy team, who's going to speak on Sunday, and they have a table out front, and they're here all weekend. This year, the staff and I and the advocacy team have been working on doing focus groups and surveys of payers, health providers, patients, caregivers, to find out what barriers are in the way of getting you the care that you need for your kids. From there, we're putting together a plan to figure out how we knock those barriers down. Now, there's a couple different ways we can knock those barriers down, but the 2 leading ones are through education, helping our patients or families like yourself argue, advocate, appeal insurance decisions, argue, advocate for what you want with your doctors. So that can be through education. But many of our barriers are going to be through legislative action, either on the state level or on the federal level. And we are very excited about the work that we're developing so that we'll be ready for the 118th Congress, which will take office in January. We hope it'll be a healthcare friendly Congress so that we can really start to move this agenda forward to make sure those barriers are knocked down. And right now, although we've been putting our plan together, our advocacy staff and many of you who are advocates for us, who have been amazing ambassadors for our organization, have not been sitting quietly just waiting for a plan. There have been a number of initiatives we've been working on. 3 of the most important are out-of-pocket costs, which we're fighting for making sure there's caps on those so that you don't have to spend your life savings for treatments and other options. We're fighting step therapy. We're proud to say there's a National Step Therapy Act in front of Congress right now. If you're not familiar with step therapy, it's when you're diagnosed with a disease and they decide to tell you you can't go on tier 4 of a drug until you try the first 3 tiers, which, if you want to break it down, be very basic, which isn't exactly the way, but you need to start with Tylenol. Then Tylenol is not working. So then now the insurance company says, now you can try drug B, and you move to B and B doesn't work. Then you get approval to move to drug C, when the doctor always knew you should be on drug D in the 4th step, but the doctor, they won't pay for it till you fail on the other 3 steps. And so we have been working statewide, and we have 27 states that passed state step therapy acts. They're not perfect, but that's because of all of you and our other adult arthritis patients who've been out there advocating to knock down step therapy rules in their states. And because of that success statewide, it has made a green wave, as we call it, into Congress to make sure we can introduce this federal Safe Steps Act, which will then clear the whole country of not having such a barrier to care. Now, it's not passed yet. We still have work to do. It'll be part of our plan for the 118th Congress. But those are an example of kind of what we've been working on and how statewide work matters just as much as federal work as well. And then one other thing we've been working very hardly on our top 3 priorities in advocacy: out-of-pocket, step therapy. Our third is pain management options. How do we look at non-opioid pain management options to get covered by insurances or access to them for you, either chiropractic care, massage therapy, acupuncture, holistic approaches, making sure that some of those are looked at in a different way than they've been looked at in the past. And so our ideal model of care plan will be ready for the next year, and we're very excited about our work there. But I did want to mention one success we just had, which is our Pediatric Subspecialty Loan Repayment Program. We've been fighting this for over 12 years with the Arthritis Foundation. Sjogren's Foundation was part of this fight. Other organizations were as well, but the Arthritis Foundation really took the lead. We know there's a limit. There's an issue with finding pediatric rheumatologists within driving distance of your home. We know there's a limited number of pediatric rheumatologists. And so for the first time after fighting for this for years, we were able to secure $5 million in pediatric subspecialty loan repayment program, which means when you go to become a pediatrician, you can add on a specialty, and that costs money and more time. And this program will help repay them for those loans that will cost money to do this. Now, it's not just for rheumatology, pediatric rheumatologists. It will be pediatric oncologists, pediatric endocrinologists, and rheumatologists and others. But it's the first time there's actually money to be had in that space. And so applications are just starting to come in for this next round of pediatric subspecialty students. And we're very excited because this will really open up the gate so that pediatricians don't just stop at being a pediatrician, that they look at becoming a specialty as well. I'm very proud of the work there. So with that, that brings me to the end of my presentation in regards to improvement of quality of life. I'm going to have Maria Vasileva come up, who's going to speak to you about the quality of life, the pathway to a cure. But I just want to share a little bit about Maria's backdrop, and then Maria and I will both be up here for questions at the end from the cards that you're filling out. So if you have them, you can raise your hand. We have staff there running around, and they'll collect them throughout my presentation as they did. I saw some being collected and Maria's. But Maria joined us last year, over a year ago, to be our Senior Vice President of Scientific Strategy. She oversees and leads all aspects of our scientific strategy in the organization, both for adult as well as juvenile arthritis. Maria has had a long career in this space. She's worked in clinical trial development, as well as in public and private partnerships, where she worked at the National Institutes of Health. She holds a PhD in biochemistry and cellular biology, and brings an amazing passion and commitment to our organization. We're thrilled to have her join us last year and really start to put together our plan for all of our lines of arthritis, making sure that not only are we investing in research, but we're making sure our investments are going to take us into the future to come out at the end with treatments and options that are going to work for your patients and your kids. So with that, please help me welcome Dr. Vasileva.
Thank you, Steve. And I just wanted to say how delighted I am to be here with you today. It's a great honor to have this opportunity to tell you a little bit about our scientific programs at the Arthritis Foundation. But before we start, I just wanted to start with my favorite quote about science by the famous American author Kurt Vonnegut, who said, science is magic that works. And maybe there are some of our younger participants in the audience that believe in magic. Well, I believe in science, and I really am delighted to be telling you a little bit about the past, present, and future of the scientific initiatives at the Arthritis Foundation. But before we dive in, I just wanted to start with some little information about myself as well. I am a mom of 2 teenage boys, and my husband and I very much understand that it does take a village to raise a child. And we at the Arthritis Foundation really want to be a part of helping you build this village. And I hope you really enjoy this meeting. And I know it's a special one for many of us. For me, it's my first GA conference since, as Steve mentioned, I joined last year in April and was able to attend virtually last year. For many of you, it's probably nice to get back together in person. And for those people who are joining us on the Zoom, it's wonderful to have you too, because this way we can all interact and really learn together. And I thought it would be important to also include some pictures from our recent events. So the staff in Atlanta here on this picture participating in the Walk for Cure in May, and then our staff in the DC area where I'm based, participating in the Walk for Cure in June of this year. It's always great to be together every opportunity we have. And I was delighted to have my whole family participate in both of the Jingle Bell runs in December. So that was exciting because we started to get to know the community, and my older son is actually in a biomedical high school program, and he's very interested in pursuing a biomedical degree in college because of some of the things he experienced through the interactions with the Arthritis Foundation. So let me start at the beginning. I think many of you know that the Arthritis Foundation has been around for a long time. In the 1940s, with the first grant being awarded in 1948, it was known as the Arthritis and Rheumatism Foundation. And then in 1964, it became officially the Arthritis Foundation. As Steve said, the mission of the foundation has always been to boldly pursue a cure for Americans' #1 cause of disability while championing the fight to cure and conquer arthritis with life-changing science, resources, advocacy, and community connections. And so science has always been a very important pillar of the strategy for success of our organization. And I know as parents, we always think progress is not fast enough. And with science, it takes a long time to take an idea from the early stage all the way to drug development, to approval, and then to implementation. So that takes a lot of investment, a lot of persistence, and a lot of money. Because of some of the early work that was done in the 70s and 80s, as many of you know, there has been an explosion of biologics, and a lot of progress has been made in scientific terms, with many drugs also now being available to kids with arthritis. But we understand that despite that, there's still 20 to 25% of the kids that never achieve remission. We also understand that those kids grow up and some of them have to live with the chronic condition for the rest of their lives. So that is why we, as a group in the Arthritis Foundation, and together with you, feel the urgency every day. So I just wanted to share that I wake up every morning and I always think, what is the best way we can structure our programs and use funding so we can continue to make progress and feel that urgency on a daily basis. Now, the good news is we can look at the pictures from JA camps from the 1970s. Clearly, the advances in science have led to tremendous improvements for the quality of life of kids living with the disease. So here are some of the pre-COVID pictures from JA camps, and I think Steve showed some of the recent pictures from this year's camps, which we're delighted to have some of them in person again. It is obvious that kids now can live much better lives, but like I said, we know, we hear from you, we see you, and we understand that there's a lot more unmet medical need, and we continue to work at that. So the Arthritis Foundation is investing in science to drive informed decision-making and improve the patient's quality of life. And we can't do this by ourselves. So we really engage a lot of the world's most creative minds as volunteers and experts on our working groups and medical and scientific advisory committees, and they help us formulate a strategy in which each one of the therapeutic areas that we focus on. And so the main areas, as Steve mentioned, for our pathway to a cure are research initiatives in osteoarthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, and juvenile arthritis. And we also have a separate work stream, which takes about 10 to 15% of our funding and is focused on workforce development. Within that portfolio, we have programs on clinical fellowships, and you'll actually be hearing from one of our fellows in the video that I have as part of my presentation today. And we also have some new diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives where we really try to address the gap in representation among clinical rheumatologists and try to work at retention, but also outreach to underrepresented minorities so that we can have them as your doctors so that they can serve better and improve the quality of life for patients. So in the juvenile arthritis space, we have partnered with CARA since 2010. CARA is the Childhood Arthritis Rheumatology Research Alliance, and almost every pediatric rheumatologist in the United States and the majority of the ones in Canada are part of CARA. Since 2015, the Arthritis Foundation has invested $35 million to support JA research through our partnership with CARA. And this support has really helped to advance our knowledge of juvenile arthritis, as well as other associated diseases in pediatric rheumatology. As Steve said, many of those diseases may be in a very small numbers of populations, and it is important to remember the rare diseases as well. Before I go any further, I also wanted to acknowledge again the sponsors of today's meeting, AbbVie, Pfizer, and Amgen, as well as IOPI as the research sponsor. And actually this year, IOPI is sponsoring 2 of the small grants that we give out through CARA on investigator-initiated initiatives. And speaking about that, we were delighted to announce this week, earlier, there was a joint press release between the Arthritis Foundation and CARA to announce the award funding for this year's awards. So we're giving out 2 small grants, 1 fellow grant, 1 implementation science design grant, 2 grants focused on biospecimen collection, and our new early career development awards. Those support pediatric rheumatologists early on in their career when they start out on their research journey, so that then they can be more competitive for NIH and other sources of funding. And they're very significant because they allow the doctors to continue to see their patients while performing research at the same time. So we're very proud that this year, about $750,000 are going to go to the support of those awards. And so through our work with CARA, we're committed to continue to support GA research. And we want to do that in very concerted and productive ways by thinking about the most important areas that we can support. And one of those areas is the CARA registry. Many of you may have had a chance to participate in the registry, to answer questions as a parent, or to have your children contribute both samples and data toward the registry. We support a portion of that registry and think that data is very important for future research advances in juvenile arthritis. Currently, they have about 12,000 participants in over 70 different sites across the United States. And a lot of our Arthritis Foundation CARA investigators grants are now starting to use the data in the registry. And actually, again, later on in this presentation, you'll hear from one of the investigators that is currently using the registry. We also support the CARA annual meeting. This is a scientific meeting where a lot of the current research is being presented and a lot of discussions are being had. And that's important because that way scientists can reach consensus about the ways to move forward. But we also want to focus on implementation science. And in that space, we're supporting consensus treatment plan development so that when you go to the doctor, your child is not just benefiting from the experience of one physician, but that one physician can refer to a consensus treatment plan and really learn from the experiences of other doctors and know what's best for the given condition and for the given person, because every child has a story and every condition is slightly different, but it's also important to have that standardization. So whether you live in rural Alabama or you live in California, you're receiving the same type of care. And we know that part of the barriers to care come from something that Steve talked about earlier today, which is the lack of access to pediatric rheumatologists in some of the more remote areas. And we're really investing a lot in our pediatric rheumatology fellowship programs. So in the workforce development program, we have the clinical fellowship rheumatology program that supports fellows as they start on their journey, either to specialize in adult rheumatology, pediatric rheumatology, or med peds. So those are the ones that do a lot more extensive research while also being a pediatric rheumatologist. We support them by $150,000 to $200,000 grants going to a program, and eventually that program secures a slot that is certified and will continue sustainably over the years and be filled with next year's fellow again and again, so that this way we're training and expanding the generation of future rheumatologists. In 2020, we also decided to expand our workforce development programs to address some of the issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So last year, we were able to award our first diversity, equity, and inclusion grants. 4 of them went to research projects looking at health equity, and 2 of the awards went for curriculum development initiatives to really try to build out the curriculum for medical school students and fellows in order to increase the representation of underrepresented minorities in the rheumatology specialty. So we're very excited to have you see a little video by one of our investigators, which will hopefully demonstrate some of the integration we're trying to achieve across our different programs. So Dan Solsby started out as a pediatric rheumatology fellow sponsored by the Arthritis Foundation at UCSF through their fellowship program. When he started his training, he also got interested in some of the issues of different health outcomes for racially different kids with JA. And then he actually submitted a diversity, equity, and inclusion research grant to the Arthritis Foundation last year. And we were able to fund it so that he can look at health disparity issues in JAA, utilizing some of the data from the CARE registry. So here we have integration of 3 different funding streams that fall within science at the Arthritis Foundation. And we were able to pull all of this together in order to support Dan. And actually, you'll be able to get a chance to hear from him today about his work on racial disparities in JAA. So I hope you enjoyed the video.
Hello, everyone. My name is Danny Solsby. I'm currently a 3rd-year pediatric rheumatology fellow at UCSF and very excited to be staying on faculty at UCSF at the end of my training later this summer. I'm so excited to speak with you all today more about the Arthritis Foundation and what it means to me. I'll say first off that the Arthritis Foundation has been central and foundational to my early career as a pediatric rheumatologist. I was lucky enough to receive the generous support of the AF through the support and funding of my fellowship program. Through the experiences I had in pediatric rheumatology fellowship, I was able to find a career that combines my desire to create long-lasting relationships with my patients, manage complex chronic disease, use clinical skills and diagnostic reasoning to serve a unique patient population in need. Clinically, my interests are focused on juvenile idiopathic arthritis, or JIA, and systemic lupus erythematosus. From a research perspective, I'm most interested in the complex intersection of social determinants of health, race and ethnicity, and patient outcomes in both arthritis and lupus. My goal through my research is to better understand the interrelationships between these complex and intertwined social factors with the goal of finding meaningful interventions for change and one day fueling interventional studies to limit and ameliorate health disparities. Throughout my fellowship and with the help of my many mentors, I was able to create or complete additional training in clinical research and complete several observational research projects looking at large existing databases of patient information, including the Childhood Arthritis and Rheumatology Research Alliance, or CARA patient registry. Moving forward, we know that work both in rheumatology and also chronic illnesses in general highlights how healthcare delivery and healthcare outcome are most certainly unequal along racial and other social lines. For example, prior work has shown that Black youth with arthritis were more likely to have higher disease activity, pain, and functional disability than their white peers. Additionally, those of lower socioeconomic means were more likely to have active disease than their more affluent peers, despite being at this similar phase of treatment. We combine this with the knowledge that we know that race is a social construct that is not rooted in biology or biologic difference, and that race as a construct or racism has influenced the fundamental structure of society, and therefore certainly has health impacts on outcomes. This includes in pediatric rheumatology, though these relationships in our field are not well understood. With the support of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Research and Health Outcomes grant from the AF, I'm very excited to collaborate with others in using the CARA registry to understand the impact of race and ethnicity with other both individual level social determinants like insurance status, with community level social determinants such as neighborhood deprivation indices like area deprivation index, to understand the complex interrelationships between these variables using statistical methods such as mediation analysis. The idea being, if we can quantify the impact of race through and beyond other social determinants of health, we'll be able to find highest yield targets for intervention while also advancing an anti-racist health and research policy in our fields. All children deserve the opportunity to grow up healthy, no matter where they come from. And we hope that this work will serve as a very small but important initial step towards studies targeted at intervening against racial and other health disparities in pediatric rheumatology. I look forward to meeting and working with more of you, and thanks so much for the opportunity.
Great. So I hope you enjoyed the video. We really wanted you to hear directly from one of our investigators. This is just one example of many. Dan he started his project and will be presenting more at a summit. We're having a virtual summit for our DEI awardees in October of this year, where they will all get to present some of their work, but we'll also be able to interact with each other and come up with better solutions and kind of continue to work on improving the quality of lives of children and adults living with arthritis. And before I end my presentation, I also wanted to mention that in addition to our brain power, we also as staff kind of put together some sweat equity into the cause. And so with that, I'm really proud to mention that we have myself and several of us at the Arthritis Foundation participating in the California Coast Classic this September, where we bike 525 miles between San Francisco and Los Angeles while trying to raise money for arthritis research. And in addition to myself, Anna Hyde, who you're going to hear from on Sunday, as well as a couple of the other advocacy team members, including Sydney, who is in the audience somewhere. And most importantly, Steve will be joining us on day one to bike with us. And so we just want to say that it's this cause is so important to us. We work for it. We fundraise for it. I've already raised over $3,500 to participate in the event from friends and family. And we really, again, wake up every day thinking about the cause. And one more thing before I end. Many of the science team members of the National Arthritis Foundation team are not here today, but I wanted to acknowledge them because none of this work would be possible without their efforts. And they're listed in alphabetical order on this slide. So on the left, you see Michelle Andueli's picture. She works on integrated health partnerships, trying to create a strategy for interaction with the healthcare providers across the United States. So we have a good value proposition for them, but also enable them to provide you with the resources you need and your children need is their patients. Next to her is Jason Kim. He works on our osteoarthritis portfolio. He's a scientist like myself and is currently working with the OA Clinical Trial Network to to develop one of the first network-run trials in osteoarthritis with focus on post-traumatic OA. So again, looking at younger populations, including kids with sports injuries, and of course, adults as well. And we're very excited to have a very clinically focused portfolio on osteoarthritis, because as many of you know, in osteoarthritis, we currently do not have a disease-modifying treatment. And so a lot of the patients live with a lot of pain throughout their lives. And right now, CDC released the latest numbers in October of last year. We know that there are 58.5 million adults in the United States living with doctor-diagnosed arthritis. Over 300,000 kids, and the number of kids is growing as well. So again, those numbers give each one of us a lot of urgency in our work. Next to Jason is Kristen Mueller. She came to the Arthritis Foundation in February of this year. Kristen is a biomedical scientist and actually worked as an editor at Science Magazine for a number of years, and then worked for another nonprofit organization after that. She brings a lot of experience and is going to oversee our autoimmune inflammatory arthritis research portfolio, including our partnership with CARA. Kristen focuses some of her efforts on rheumatoid arthritis as well. And currently in rheumatoid arthritis, we have a new initiative that's going to look at non-responders. So those are the patients that are non-responsive to any of the currently available drugs, because at least in RA, biologics and other drugs are available to the patients, but there's still some that continue to have flares and are living with their disease without being in remission. Next to Kristen is Suzanne Nielsen. She's our Director of Science and Clinical Workforce Programs, and Suzanne oversees all the fellowship as well as the DEI work at the foundation. So I am sorry you don't get a chance to meet them today, but as Steve said, we have a lot of staff from the Arthritis Foundation here. So I hope you talk to us about our scientific initiatives, and you really learn a lot about how we're investing the dollars to try to create progress and move the field forward, with the ultimate goal of improving the lives of kids and adults living with arthritis. And as Steve mentioned, there are many ways to get involved, so I'm not gonna repeat anything anymore about this. Hopefully you're enjoying the rest of this meeting. And with that, I think we're ready to take some questions. So I will invite Steve back up on the stage. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Maria. And I just want to start off saying Maria and I'll be available for additional questions, because we won't get through all our questions this morning, but we'll be in the lobby during our break and be more than happy to talk to you. But most importantly, I didn't say during my presentation, I hope that you'll come up and chat with me about your personal story, share your kid's story, and let me know more about you as well, or ask questions, anything you'd like. I definitely would love to meet all of you. And I won't be in a suit the entire weekend. I'm going to dress down after this. And so you'll see me casual, dressed in some groovy attire for tonight's dance as well. So, but first, so we have a number of questions that we're going to jump right in. So Maria, how long does it take to develop a drug in many diseases, just on average?
Yeah, that's a great question. Unfortunately, you probably won't like the answer to that. So drugs usually take up to 20 years to develop. And it really depends on how much basic research on the lab bench has been done ahead of time. Once the basic research is done and you have a specific target for the drug, it's taken into translational development, then clinical development. Clinical trials go through phases. You have a phase 1, which is based on safety, phase 2, which is beginning to look at efficacy of the drug, and then phase 3, which is the largest trials that include a lot of people across different countries. And then you can submit that data to the regulatory agencies for approval. Once the drug is approved, then it's also looked in this country by CMS for reimbursement. So there's a whole separate process for that. So all of that, of course, takes a lot of time. And that's why it is very important that there are multiple companies still to be involved in those efforts, and to be looking at multiple candidates at the same time.
And Maria, on that, obviously I've been involved in clinical trials closely, but repurposing a drug will take shorter, then that's the pipeline for an entire, from a compounded asset that's never been used all the way through. But some of that, if we can find out efficacy as well as, you know, if it works in regards to other things that might be repurposed, right?
Yes, and so the thing that is interesting for drugs that are utilized in children is that sometimes a drug can be approved for use in adults, and then there are additional studies being done, which are pharmacokinetic studies, how quickly it's absorbed by the body. And then with that, you can repurpose the drug or use it for additional indications in children. And that process takes shorter, but once again, depending on the type of drug and the mechanism, the time can vary. One thing I didn't mention in my slide that had the whole drug pipeline is that currently gene therapy is one of the new areas that are being looked at for juvenile arthritis. And with some of the newer therapies, there may be more innovative regulatory mechanisms for approval, and therefore the hope is that approval will take shorter, as Steve said.
That's great. Another follow-up question on that, which I'll answer, was how you can be involved in clinical trials. So one way you can be involved in clinical trials is obviously take part in the CARE registry. So talk to your pediatric rheumatologist about joining the CARE registry and giving your information of your child to them so that they can use it in their registry, but also you'll be contacted for potential clinical trials. In addition, by signing up with the Arthritis Network, with the Arthritis Foundation, you'll also be contacted if we know of any clinical trials are happening in your area or that your child might meet certain needs for as well. So by all means, by being engaged with the Arthritis Foundation, we'll keep you abreast of any clinical trials that might be happening. But really, your pediatric rheumatologist and care will also be a first line of defense for that. Another question came up regarding how do you find the Arthritis Network? How do you find local people in your community? And that was one of the questions on the cards. I encourage you, there is a table out front to the right when you go out where you can actually sign up and put your email and name down, and our local executive director that covers your market will reach out to you to introduce you to your Arthritis Foundation and then introduce you to their JA chair and whoever is helping run programs in your local community. Because it is hard here to do, 50 states tables all over and have everyone meet each other. So I know that's sometimes hard at conferences like this, but by all means, and those volunteers that are working that table know a lot of people here. So they might know someone if you're from Chicago and they might say, hey, there's someone from Chicago, let me find them and introduce you. So, and then in your networking groups, always when you ask a question or talk, it's always great to say your name and where you're from, even if they don't tell you to say where you're from, because someone else in the room might be from where you're near, and they might run up to you after as well. So always introduce yourself in meetings and networking sessions of who you are and then where you're from. And that might also help make some connections for you as well. Maria, in regards to, can you share a little bit? I thought this was a really insightful question, and I'll paraphrase it, but a lot of research is done in Europe as well as in the United States. How do the two continents kind of collaborate? I know we do some work in that area as well, but can you share a little bit from your history on that?
Yeah, sure. This is a great question. So each region has a regulatory agencies that looks at the drug development pipelines and get submissions from within the country and outside the country. In this country, the regulatory agency is FDA. In Europe, the regulatory agency is called EMA. In Japan, it's called PMDA. But more and more companies are global and they would like to develop a drug that can be marketed in more than one location. So they might submit packages to more than one regulatory agency. And so because of that, in drug development, but even in biomarker validation or some of the earlier steps of regulatory programs that look at patient stratification, the agencies are starting to collaborate and see if they can kind of make their requirements similar. So a company could submit packages simultaneously to more than one place. However, there's still some different requirements for each country, and therefore a lot of organizations will work with regulatory advisory groups in order to be able to submit their packages and meet all those requirements. And the hope is that the different requirements are not really becoming an obstacle to having the drugs approved across the world in similar time, but it is very often that you'll see something approved and marketed, let's say in Europe first, then in the US, or vice versa.
Great. Thanks, Maria. There's a number of questions that I'll jump into that I can handle real quickly. One was someone wanted to know about volunteering, but doesn't have a lot of time. Surely there's great opportunities to volunteer for the organization. And I had other questions around advocacy and other things in the pile of cards. So one thing is by joining the network, talking to the local executive director, they'll have opportunities where you and your family can volunteer at a booth at a walk, just a one-day event. Easy done. Or you can join a committee, which is more time commitment, of course, or you can become, one question we had here is what does advocacy actually mean? And on Sunday, you're going to hear a great story on advocacy from our advocacy team and a volunteer that's here from Seattle area, Heidi. But also advocacy means anything you want it to be, but helping us reach out to legislators and others that are making decisions by telling your story. It's not difficult. You don't have to learn all the intricacies of how to make a bill, how a bill gets through Congress or through your state legislature, but telling your story, writing a letter. We actually give you sample letters that you can actually just copy and paste and put your name on it. We give you opportunities. So by signing up on our website to be an advocate, we will walk you through. And sometimes you'll do nothing when you get an email saying, hey, you know, the state of Wyoming wants to pass this bill and we support it. Will you send a letter? Sometimes you'll do it, sometimes you won't. It's very passive. You can be as involved as you want or not as involved as you want per issue as well. So by signing up to be a part of our grassroots advocacy network, you'll get emails, and that's a very easy way to volunteer as well. So there's opportunities from committees all the way through. And then there's, of course, detailed research opportunities to be involved as a parent as well. And I don't know if you just want to share a little bit about how parents are involved in that.
That's a great point. So a lot of our research proposals do get evaluated by a patient panel as well. So if any of you are a scientist or are interested in science and would like to review proposals, that could be a one-time engagement opportunity or a long-term engagement opportunity where you get involved and review awards. And for the younger people in the audience, if you have an interest in science and you would like to do an internship or learn more about how to perform science research or review scientific research, we can have you observe some of the reviews that we perform. So those are all opportunities to get engaged.
Absolutely. There is a question about research on mental health. And I just want to mention tomorrow, I believe it is, there's a general session on mental health here at this conference. So I hope you'll all take part in that and hear more about work being done in that area, as well as other opportunities. Now, the question was on mental health, but we are looking at other things. We had a yoga speaker talking about the science behind yoga at our Pathways conference in June. I know that Maria and the team are looking at alternative research on other things as well around that. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Maria, but it is obviously an important mental health, yoga, holistic treatments, nutrition are all part of our portfolio that we're always looking at.
And also on the patient reported outcome side, when we collect information from patients, like through the JA Insight survey or in the care registry, there some of the questionnaires are focused on mental health, and it's so important to get that information directly from the patients and their caregivers, because it does inform both the way research is structured, even clinical trials, as well as research priorities for the future. So we see more and more, even at the NIH and in other government funding agencies, having mental health as part of the larger aspect of the way things are looked at as from the research side. So definitely, if you're interested in participating in answering some of the surveys for the care registry and J Insights, mental health is is incorporated there.
And real quick, Maria, a question came about CARA data and it being publicly available. Do you want to talk about articles and published articles on the CARA registry, and then a little bit about what we're doing with that as well?
Yeah, so the CARA registry has been around for a few years, but it is tracking some of the patients longitudinally. So the way data is collected is every 6 months. When someone comes to a visit, they answer patient-reported outcome surveys, both the parent and the child, but also they collect clinical samples and are trying to tie all of this information together. So now, with some of the patients having been seen over a number of years, maybe 2 or 3 years, there is sufficient data for scientists to begin to look at some of the trends or analyze some of the results. So now we're starting to see some of the early days of the publications that are coming out. We know and we understand a lot of patients want to see how they compare themselves to other patients in terms of disease progression and treatment. And that is part of the goals of the research, is to look at treatment efficacy, to compare different types of treatments. And that will become possible in the next 2 to 3 years. We just have to have enough longitudinally collected data to look at some of this research.
Yeah, so it takes a little time sometimes for data and stuff to be shared, but it definitely is starting, and you can even Google and look it up on Medscape and other places to find some information on the care registry, but surely we're very on top of that. Plus the Arthritis Foundation is going to start partnering with CARA on even asking some of our own research questions through the care registry, so we can then publish some information ourselves and learn from those that have taken part. Another question on here, and I'll just add real quickly, was on the safety of your information in CARA. CARA follows very strict privacy as well as de-identification rules and laws with IRB approval, which is international reviews. And so very, very safe to be a part of the CARA registry by all means in regards to that. Real quickly, there was a number of questions. I'm going to rattle through them real quick just so you hear them. We are looking at some national connect groups for kids. There are some rules and maybe even some laws we have to be careful of because of the age of kids, but we are looking at some doing national connect groups for teens and some other things. We do plan on organizing, there's a question about opportunities and education materials in all the markets. And so we are starting to streamline some of that from the national level as well. So you'll see more regular information coming out across all the markets on juvenile arthritis and having the same kind of standardized information for all the markets as well. In regards to local camps, there is still opportunity to go to the camps that haven't happened yet. I think there's space in almost every camp, and you can travel to the camp. You don't have to live in that market. Now it is an expense. I understand it's not easy for everybody, but you can get to the camp. If you can get your child to the camp, you don't have to live in that state or even in that market to take part. And we are evaluating additional camps for next year. Right now we are at our 9 camps. We are always looking at opportunities. The breadth of what we used to have, that's a question, is going to be hard to get back to post-COVID. And so we had a group of parents help us decide what to do with our camps. And so, but we're always continuing to evaluate, and we'd love to have your input and ideas on that, of course, as always. And I think that was basically all the questions. Real quick, the last question was on technology. Is obviously the Arthritis Foundation is abreast, and especially with Maria's leadership, ahead on telemedicine. We're ahead on technology, making sure we're looking at electronic health medical records and how we can collect data that way from our adult population. CARA does it in the JA space with our support, as Maria mentioned, how much we support CARA financially. And so technology is surely something we're looking at that will advance a lot of the areas of research for sure, but also advance access as well. So with that, we are done with our questions, but Maria and I will be available outside at the break by all means to hear your stories, to take hard questions, whatever you might have. I love talking to the patients as well as the families as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Liz Smith, who's going to do another award this morning. So Liz. Yep.
So good morning, and thank you again, Steve and Maria. I'm delighted this morning to announce the winner of the 2022 Young Adult Leadership Award. This award is presented to a young adult between the ages of 18 and 30 who has shown exceptional courage and strength in their own experience of living with arthritis. This year's recipient is Kara Legillis, I hope I said that correctly, from Signal Hill, California, or excuse me, Kendra. I apologize, Kendra, if you're watching. Kendra has been a dynamic young adult leader, serving as co-director of Camp Esperanza, a young professional board member in Los Angeles, as well as a California Coast Classic honoree and committee lead. She volunteers as a traveling 8-day volunteer for the California Coast Classic because our riders like Maria and her team couldn't do it without the volunteers. And as Maria said, that's a 525-mile bike ride from San Francisco to Los Angeles. Despite the long days and hard work being extra challenging for a person with arthritis, she's inspired the riders and the crew with perseverance and determination. She's currently training for this year's bike ride in September. So kudos to Kendra. Kendra was not able to join us this year in Orlando, but I hope that she's watching and knows how proud we all are of her this year. Kendra truly demonstrates how bright the future is for young leaders with juvenile arthritis, inspiring others to live their best lives. Congratulations to Kendra.